Hello again. Today I want to tell you about narrative writing. Of course, a narrative is a story. Writing any narrative, whether fictional or not, involves putting some order to events that in real life are often more random. As the storyteller, you create a sequence of events we call a plot. To have a plot, though, there must be a problem or a conflict to resolve. In a plot, a character, the protagonist of the story, wants to have or to be or to do something, while the antagonist may be a character, also could be nature, society, or even the protagonist's own conscience, works against his or her desires. In other words, the plot revolves around the conflict between the protagonist and his or her antagonist. The conflict is played out in a series of events called the rising action, until resolved in the climax, the moment when either the protagonist or the antagonist prevails. The remainder of the story, the falling action, involves tying up loose ends, what happened after the conflict ended. During the falling action, we often hear a character, or perhaps the narrator, reflect on the larger truths that emerge from the story, what it all means. Now, when you use narrative technique in writing an essay, you still use the elements of the essay you've already learned about. You have an introduction, and introducing the topic and asserting a thesis. That's followed by a body paragraphs supporting the thesis, but in this kind of writing, those paragraphs also tell a story. And of course, you have a conclusion that, like the conclusion of any good story, involves widening out the meaning of the essay or the story to a more universal significance. When writing your narrative essay, pay attention to verb tense. Keep verb tense consistent. Fictional stories often use the present tense, but in your narrative essay, past tense is probably best. Don't confuse simple past tense with past perfect, though. The simple past indicates that an action occurred and was finished in the past. For example, I walked down the street. The past perfect uses the helping verb had to indicate that the action was completed before some other action was completed. For example, I had walked down the street before I found that I had left my phone at home. Be sure to thoughtfully choose the correct verb tense form when telling your story. Another common error involves punctuation. In a narrative, you should include dialogue, so you must be sure to correctly place the quotation marks in the other punctuation. For example, you might write, I went into the house and asked, who's there? Note the comma before the quoted words, as well as the question mark placed inside the end quotes. If your quote is not a question, then place your comma or period correctly inside the quotes. For example, I went into the house and said, hello, Mother. Keep in mind that you must put periods and commas inside the ending quotation mark. You can read more about punctuating quotes and dialogue in your textbook pages I've assigned for this chapter. Your narrative essay may involve either a fictional event or one drawn from your life. I prefer to read more personal narratives, so I suggest you look through your life experience for subject matter. I hope you enjoyed this unit, and I look forward to reading your essays.